guys. So
It's been 24 hours.
I know.
So you had said by the end of this week you may have an answer to that running back situation. Do you know what you're going to do?
I think the here's what I really feel like is we're really confident in that running back room right now. And to be honest, Kene Nwangu got dinged up a little bit. It was a hamstring. But Kene will be back at full strength on Sunday. He had a really good camp going on. Johnny Lang's had a great camp. Brees Hall's had a great camp. So Sheldon continues to do really good things. So I think to me, what this is going to be, and I said this early on, it's going to probably be the first couple weeks till we sort that whole thing out and who's what and where can they go. But I do think the real positive for us is that whole entire room has done a great job. And I'll be honest with you, Jairo Brock, for coming in early, or coming in when he did, has really started to come off the last week and a half. So we feel really confident in that room. I think it's going to have to play out a little bit. And even saying that, it'll play out a little bit of who's the starting guy next Saturday. But I think they'll all get reps and kind of work through the early part of the season.
People talked about the wide receivers too, as who's going to make up for the targets that Hakeem left. It seems like you guys are pretty deep there, and it's just a matter of getting guys on the field. What have you seen overall, and maybe who stood out at that position?
Well, I think that group's probably grown the most this camp, and probably just because getting some guys late like Pet and like Darren, going through the early stages of what are the expectations of Iowa State football. They didn't get that in spring practice. And, the first week, looked rusty, where you saw the second and third week, these guys really starting to maybe show who they really are. So, I think this is a group that is going to continue to grow. Again, probably a little bit like the running backs. We've seen a couple more of those guys play. We know what Milton can do. We know what Jones can do. But I think those rest of those guys, we feel like there's a lot of talent there. You guys know this, until the lights come on and you do it against other people, you can get the signal, you can get lined up, and then you can make the play. It's great that you're out there doing it in practice with coaches on the field and sometimes coaches off the field, but who can do it when the lights come on? And Joe Skates has had a really great spring to a great summer to now really good fall camp, so he's done a great job. Sean Shaw continues to work really hard. So, there's Landon Akers moving inside, I think, has been really good for us. So, you're talking 7-8 guys that have a lot of ability and continue to space those guys out. I'm not even talking the tight ends right now.
What have you seen from Wilson and Petway? Obviously, guys that get to the program and maybe have to play some catch-up. What do they do this camp?
Well, they grinded through it a little bit, and I think that's easier said than done. Again, Darren got spring ball, at his junior college, and Pet didn't. So I think Darren was a little bit ahead conditioning football-wise. But again, both those guys have really grinded through it, the early part of it. I think struggled early, but really the last 2 weeks have been exceptional. And so I think guys that will really bring value. What value do they bring? They've played. They know what college experience looks like so far. And you can see that experience and that growth really starting to take shape. So it's really helped the young guys out, and I think that room has really grown over the last 2 weeks, which is certainly positive for us, and still a question mark for us too as we go into the season.
Is Trevor Downing one of your 5 starting, at least I know you've always said you want the best 5 offensive linemen. Is he one of those 5?
Yeah, I think those will be, that's a hot competition right now. And until, we get through the early part and, big Tuesday, big Wednesday practices next week, I think it's too early to tell, but there's 6 guys fighting for 5 starting spots. But I think you'll see a lot more guys play than there have in the past, which I think that's a huge positive too, that we can sit up here and say that today. But Trevor certainly had an outstanding camp.
In what
Chase
ways
healthy
has
too? I heard maybe he got dinged up in one of the scrimmages.
Yeah, we've had a couple guys that got dinged up, but the nice thing for us is, we'll be at full strength on Monday, and I honestly, I don't know when the last time that's happened. This has been the most physical camp that I've been a part of, and I thought we were a pretty physical team at Toledo. But I think this has been a really physical camp, and to be able to be physical and still, at this point, knock on wood, be in fairly good shape health-wise is a real positive.
other than that physicality, in what ways has this end of fall, end of preseason camp been different from end of preseason camp in 2016?
Well, I think the big thing for us is just the growth mindset of the players in our locker room. We don't waste days. I think today was our 16th practice, and you haven't seen this team tail off. And to be honest with you, you've seen this team grow. And I think a part of that was structured that way. I hope my growth has occurred too as a coach. I think we're a total different team back then than we are now, where now you're trying to grow them into preparing to play really well from the beginning of the season, where I think the past couple of years you've been trying to continue to build to your foundation and what you're going to have to rely on, where I think this team's got that foundation underneath them and we're really able to build into fall camp. And, it's been a really good building session for this group, but I thought this group hasn't wasted a day yet. I'm really proud of them.
In what ways has the roster changed?
Yeah, no, you're talking probably night and day in terms of where we are, and I think the credit in the roster, just grows the competition. You're looking at young guys coming in that are really talented, that are pressing the twos, the threes, the ones for playing time. I think that hopefully makes our special teams better. I think it makes the depth in our program better. But again, that's probably the biggest difference is, we've been able now, going in 4 years, been able to recruit to a plan and, and got guys that love football that have worked really hard to better themselves and be the best version of them they can be. So that's probably the biggest difference.
Which battles do you still see, I guess, playing out heading into that first game?
Yeah, you talked about some of those unknown areas a little bit. Obviously, the wide receiver piece, there's some really good players until we get out there and do it. And, it'll take a while, my guess is, to figure out who those guys are consistently. I think the same thing at the tailback spot. I think that, see a little bit of that with the field safety position for us on the defensive side. How we continue to incorporate some of those really skilled guys and Sam linebacker. I think those are things that are all, as we went into fall camp, they were questions, and we don't leave fall camp. It's hard to say they're answered because we haven't played anybody. So I think until they're answered in front of our opponents and playing in real live game situations, it's hard to have an answer today.
What have you seen at the same spot with Will and Pulvermacher?
Yeah, I think a lot of the positives of what we saw prior to is elite athleticism, guys that, can do some of the things that we've asked that Sam linebacker position to do in the past, and they got to be so multiple there because we asked that guy to do a lot of things. And those two body types, those two players have certainly had that kind of ability and have shown it. And so I think just the linebacker group in general has been really impressive. Orion Vance, player that's had an incredible fall camp, in my opinion, a guy that continues to push to be a major factor for this team, was last year, but I thought made great strides. Jake Hummel, and you're not even talking about what Mike Rose has done and certainly what Marcel has done. So, I think just the collective whole in general is really exciting for all of us. But, we feel like we've got some really good depth and the ability to do a lot of different things with that group.
The weather forecast for next Saturday, a week from Saturday, there's no rain in it.
That's positive. That's the biggest win we can have.
But looking back, how did that set you back?
Oh, that was a hard challenge a year ago, and just with, again, we had a lot of question marks a year ago. Probably more question marks a year ago than we had at this time this year. But I think when you lose one of those valuable game experiences, it doesn't matter who you're playing or where you're playing or when you're playing them. You only get 12 of them, and when you lose one of those, I think it can be a real challenge for a football team. And, the younger you are, I think the harder that challenge is. I've always said it, and I always will. There is great growth between your first game and the second game that you play because you don't get to. It's really hard to match the game-like situation that a football game really brings to the table. So, I thought a really good challenge and a challenge we just had to work through last year. But whether it was a setback or a challenge, it certainly was a tough challenge that we had to work through, and the veterans on our team were able to allow us to work through it.
So is having an off week in week 2 good or bad?
Oh, I love it. We did that every year at Mount Union. So, my entire career, that's how it was and when I coached there. So I love the ability to play a game and then have the ability to, where are you as a football team for real? What's this team really look like? And, where are those margins that you better hurry up and change? And where are those margins that you feel like, we can continue to build on? So, I think it's certainly a positive for us.
Have you guys started prepping for UNI yet, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I kind of, to be honest with you, 60-40 Iowa State to UNI this week probably. I think the last 2 days, yesterday, today, and then obviously tomorrow, will be really heavy UNI focused. And I think one of the positives for us is, we kind of know what that team looks like and feels like, and I think the credit to that says that you better be ready to play football, because they're a football team. Attitude, effort, even schematics at times can resemble some of the things we do, but we know the challenge at hand, and that's my fear would be to not prepare for them would be a huge mistake. So I think our football team's got great focus right now.
How much better has the consistency piece gotten since you got here? Not only in-game execution, but each practice, each winter, and each camp.
Yeah, I think that has been the monumental change in our program, is the consistency to the process, right? Like what's it take for me to be the best version of me every day? What's it take for our team to be the best version of us every day? The more individuals you got buying into that, the better you're going to be, and the more those individuals can bring those guys that sometimes need lifted up, the better you're going to be. And I think what you got in our locker room right now is a group of men, and some young men and some men, that are maybe some of the greatest leaders from that standpoint that I've seen. And so I think that's been a huge positive, and something, obviously, if you don't have player ownership in your program, I think it's really hard to have. And I think that's probably been the greatest growth. That consistency's happened because the player-driven leadership. It's not Coach Campbell saying do this. It's these guys saying this is what it takes here to win, and this is what will allow us to be successful, and then holding themselves and others accountable to do it. That's been a huge change.
You've always said that you want to wait and see the freshmen in pads before you make any kind of too many comments on them. What 16 practices in, is there anybody who at least is worth highlighting?
Well, I'll say this probably in general for this group. They're sometimes you get into that first 16, 17 practices and I'm like, man, that guy's either really good or that guy's going to take a while to develop. This is bar none the best class of freshmen that we've brought in here. And I think in some areas that it's probably easy to, whether it's a mistake or whether it's, sometimes a challenge to evaluate. Our defensive backs that came in this class and the offensive linemen in this class, I would say collectively are the best that we've brought in here, and that part's exciting. One of those guys helped us this year, I think way too early to tell. Guys like, I think a guy like Kamani King that I talked about a little bit, been flash and been really good. Verdell Edwards, safety guy that's been flash, been really good. So that part's certainly really positive. At the offensive line, that group, again, are any of those guys going to play? I don't know. But there's some of those guys really shown that great potential. Grant Driver, some of these guys that came in and I think really successful. The running back's been really impressive at that spot. Especially nice to have Bruce come in early. I think that really helped him greatly understand the expectation of what it takes to play here. The tight end position, excited about. The defensive line position, Corey Suttle's a guy that's flashed and done some great things for us already with Blake Peterson and the team, linebacker for him. So yeah, we're really excited about that group, and I really am. And I think it's a group of guys that somewhere down the line may help us and continue to push the depth of this football team.
Is Trevor Downing more on left guard or right guard?
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Trev is he can kind of go all three spots. He can play left guard, he can play center, he can play right guard. So, Trev's got a lot of value because he can play all those positions. So, like I said, we'll figure out what the best five are for us. But, Trevor's had a good camp and certainly pushing to be a part of that starting five at some point.
Joe, your punter?
Yes, yeah. If you say what's somebody that's really stepped up, I'll tell you, Joe, we're really excited about. I know I said this before camp started. Joe's been in hard situations, clutch situations in the past. Being our holder, having to come into that Drake game and do a great job. I think now, it's like anybody. You lose a good player, and the next player's got to step up. And how does he respond to that adversity? And Joe's taken it head on. I'm excited about Joe. I think Joe's really talented. Thought Joe was really talented when he came in here, and I think he's really it's been huge for him to get really quality reps with our ones and be able to take advantage of it.
What do you think Brock's gotten out of this game?
Oh, I think the biggest thing Brock has is a sense of, that overall leadership and ownership of it. Not that he needed that, because I think Brock's a guy that's got so much respect by his teammates and his coaches. But I think understanding how to take that ownership onto the field from play to play. and from situation to situation, and to be honest with you, sometimes from day to day. Nice thing about having a really great defense for Brock to go against is, you know, if you're going to win the day, you better be on it, and you know that offense better be on it. And I think it's been a pretty good back and forth camp, and to have to respond to those tough days, who's stepping up and leading? You know, Kyle Kemp's not here anymore, and you know David Montgomery's not here anymore. Those guys were those verbal leaders and those great leaders where you've seen Brock kind of take some of that role, and you can only do that if you're mastering your own craft. And I think Brock's a guy that probably has made that growth right now, which has been really fun. And then, you know, I just think, you know, offensively, it's nice having, you know, Coach Manning continuing to build our playbook and who we are offensively, and being able to do that, all of us sitting there and saying, hey, we want to do it in around the skill sets of what Brock has the ability to do, and certainly, you know, what a guy like Real Mitchell has the ability to do as well. So I think those things have been real positive for us too.
Do you guys anticipate naming captains sometimes in the next couple of days?
We will. I think assuming that'll get done tomorrow before our practice tomorrow.
You mentioned Real. Has there gained confidence in through I guess almost a month of fall camp?
Oh, I'd say absolutely. You know, I think Real is a player that has got an incredible skill set. He's a guy that you know, just continues to grow, in my opinion, and he grows both on and off the field. And I think that part has been really good. I think positive to have a guy like Kyle Kemp that's back on your staff, where you know Kyle off the field can be a great asset to you know exactly what Real has to do. And I think those two have really formed a real positive relationship. So I think that's been real positive.
With all the position battles that are going on, I know you said that you can't really value the positions that are up for battle until you obviously get on the field and you go up against different competition, specifically the running backs. What are you and the rest of the coaching staff looking for, and what are you kind of valuing, and what's someone that could stand out if they do this?
Yeah, I really think it comes to two values that we try to evaluate every one of our players on. It's consistency and trust. Consistency to do the job that's asked of you, and the trust to do it not only on game day, but doing it on practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and leading up to game day. And so, you know, those are the two things. Our kids know that, and obviously within the job description, you know, like a running back, I've got to be able to run it, catch it, block with great consistency, you know, be able to fulfill those requirements. But to me, that's what we're looking for, and that's why I think it's a hard say of, man, this guy's that guy, or this guy's this guy, until the lights come on and they get the opportunity to play and they get the opportunity to put in adverse situations and have to respond. So I look forward to that, because I think we'll finally find out where we really are and what kind of team we really have.
What was the process of really getting the 50?
Well, you know, I think that's something that Coach Rashid, that defensive line group, has really taken great ownership in. You know, to be honest with you, the Coach Bray situation here, the Coach Bray story of who he was, not only as a football player, having a great idea about that from my background at the University of Pittsburgh, to coming here and meeting Coach Bray's family, and you know, having Colton around a lot of practice and watching the humility and character that, you know, that obviously every player in our program that was here when Coach Bray was here talked about who he was, to, you know, getting that opportunity to interact with their family and see what they stand for. I think that was really important to carry that tradition and carry that legacy of what he brought to the program with some guys that had been recruited by him. And I think that tells you what a powerful man Coach Bray was, that his spirit and who he was has carried on with that defensive line room. And so, you know, I think for us, that's a process that really kind of stays within house in that D-line room. They come out with who should represent, you know, that number, and that group decides on that. And, you know, when we decided on that, we tried to do it towards the end of camp going into the season. So obviously, Ray Lima, we know what kind of character he stands for, and I know he's really honored to be able to wear that number going into this fall for us.